Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Sports Shorts. This is episode 26, which means this is our 1-year anniversary of doing Sports Shorts. And today, this of course is Bobby Hacker, the Sports Shorts guy, your host, BD, past president of the SLA, longtime board member. And I'm here today with our guest, Constance Schwartz-Morini.
Schwartz here for sports.
Schwartz here for sports.
For short sports.
I like that.
There you go.
And Constance is the proprietor, owner of SMAC Entertainment.
Co-owner
with a guy who some of you might have heard of.
Yeah.
Actually, we know it. Her partner in this business is Michael Strahan, who I knew from my days at Fox and can honestly say, without blowing smoke, one of the nicer people that you would ever meet, period. No athlete, no Hall of Famer, one of the nicest people. And I think as we discussed and talk a little bit about your business and the people you have, all nice people.
There's a theme there, and there's for a reason.
There's a doctrine that's called the no somethings, and I think this business has none of them around here.
Correct.
Life is too short. Anyway, the way we usually start our little discussion here is to not only tell us a little bit about what your job is, what this business is, but your path to getting into it. And obviously, we have to talk about your days in the NFL.
Gladly. I mean, I loved it. It's like everyone always looks for the story, but it was an MBA, over a decade being there. But one quick correlation back to the law. Not that I've been arrested, not that there's anything wrong with that. But I actually, when I went to college, I went in as a poli-sci major because I wanted to be an attorney. And I took a marketing 101 class, and that was when it just was like, nope, this is my path. So I always do have an affinity though for law. And I wish that there was like a crash course that I could have taken, because we end up negotiating so much of what we do ourselves before we hand it over to the smart people to then dive into all the words I don't understand. Once we get into all the other clauses that have nothing to do with the actual deal. So I respect and spend a lot of money with lawyers, quite a bit.
And on behalf of the profession, we thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So when did you come to the NFL? Was that right out of school, or?
It was my second job out of school, but really more like the first one, because the very first job I had was because I was getting office experience because I couldn't type under pressure. That's back in the early 1990. So you had to take a typing test in order to even be interviewed. And I had no problem starting at the bottom, but I just couldn't type on a typewriter under pressure with an egg timer sitting next to me. So I went in back to the headhunter about 8 months after the initial job out of college, and he'd had the NFL as an account. I was like, now's the time, I'm ready. And he said, perfect timing, something just opened up. And I studied as much as I could pre-internet, went to the library, pulled up a Dun & Bradstreet on NFL properties to make sure I knew everything, that there was to know about them, and went in and crushed it. And the head of human resources at the time said, I've never had an assistant come in this prepared. And I was like, well, I don't plan on being an assistant very long. Although it was a little longer than I wanted to, but I had to do a lateral move to another department to follow my original boss, who I still talk to and love to this day. Shout out to Maureen Rosen. And stayed there for 10 seasons, corporate sponsorship, live events, television events, special events, children's education programs, mini camps for kids. And then I started what's now is this huge entertainment department that a whole bunch of people run, that it was just me and an assistant just going off of a fluke meeting with a record label person that Commissioner Don Garber, who was my boss at the time, didn't want to take, and stayed there, like I said, for 10 seasons. And everything that I absorbed and learned there is really like the DNA of SMAC when you understand like what we do. So people come in here and think we're all over the place, but I'm actually like, no, if you look at the first 20 years of my career, everything I've learned, we've brought in-house.
So then talk to us about SMAC and what its mission is and what the goals are of this company.
So SMAC stands for Sports, Media, and Culture, if you're trying to figure that out. A lot of people think it's a play on Michael Strahan and Constance Schwartz's initials, which it could be, but it's not. And we started out with mostly production and representation. And as not just his career evolved, but our other clients evolved, because I learned again so much, not just the NFL, But then when I managed Snoop, for all that time and worked with all the other clients at the firm on the marketing side of the business, I really like know how to take an idea and take it all the way through execution. And what I don't know, I call our really smart lawyers, and just say, help me kind of navigate through these waters.
Mhm.
But that's how the third silo here, which is the business development piece. So representation, production. And then when we say business development, it's Michael Strahan's brand. So his, men's head to toe, now skincare, we had luggage, you name it, anything, for a man, we make it. And then Erin Andrews and I launched 3 years ago, Wear by Erin Andrews, which was for female fans like ourselves who want to represent our teams, but not have, bedazzles and sequins, which a lot of people like, but a lot of people don't. And so we just saw white space, and we partnered up with Michael Rubin at Fanatics, got our license through those guys, and started with the NFL. And now we have all the major leagues. MLB, we launched this summer, hoping there's a season, get it together. The NHL was this past season, and the NBA was 2 seasons ago. So nothing like launching in the middle of a pandemic. We're the ones, looking out our window at the Pacific Ocean with all the barges lined up and just like, get in here faster. But, we're all in the same boat, literally.
Yeah, everybody is. And it wasn't audience, it was not name dropping, but they do represent Snoop Dogg.
Oh gosh, no, definitely not a name dropper. No, I was Snoop's full-time manager for 49 dog years, which is 7 human years. Took a break. It was the best time of my life with him, but it wasn't my life. And so when I realized I just sort of needed to take a step back, we remained very good friends. His wife is one of my best friends. And over the last probably 5 years, I think I would say I'm probably the consigliere. You guys know what that means. And wink, wink, and just jump in where I'm needed. And his wife, who's his manager, I
Right.
work with her a lot, very closely.
Well, in case you haven't seen it, the new issue of Vanity Fair came out today, and he's on the back page with the questionnaire.
Oh, really?
So it's pretty
Oh,
interesting.
good. I didn't see that yet.
So you said an interesting thing. You talked about Michael and the brand, and it seems a lot of the people that you represent are really brands. They're not just celebrities, and that they have the potential to do so much more than just be a talking head on television.
Mhm.
How do you approach that and develop those sorts of assets?
If they're not a brand, they're not for us. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I don't know what to do with a one-dimensional person, and there's nothing wrong with people that take that career path. It's just I'm not the right person for them, and we're not the right team, because I might be the one sitting here talking to you, but there is a small army that busts their butts, making sure that we are able to build all these businesses or platforms or television shows or content series and things of that nature. And I think that's aside from the nice, theme, it's also people that want to hustle like they're broke. That's the SMAC company mantra. And that's really, I think, how our clients, look at it. You talked before, Troy Aikman, another Hall of Famer, came into the family a couple weeks ago, and he just launched a beer called 8, and it actually is really, really good. And I think that's one of the reasons we were attractive for Troy, is we know how to jump in when needed. We also know how to stay on the sidelines when we're not needed. And we're very much a proactive group. So on the brand ambassadors or speaking engagements, we have a couple folks here that are just constantly outreach, working every agency and networking, and we'll put our clients in front of people even without a potential deal, just because if you're the last person, that one of these talent buying agencies have seen, you'll be top of mind. And that's, I think, something that not enough people do. And a lot of, I think, talent think they're above that, and those aren't the folks we want here. And that's okay.
Yeah, well, I think you should definitely have, I like that you use the phrase, hustle like you're broke.
Mhm.
And there should be SMAC t-shirts that say that,
Mhm.
because it's a great expression. But when you're dealing with something, let's talk about sort of Michael to a certain extent. So Michael was a Hall of Fame player, clearly beloved in New York, came over to Fox and just hit the ground running. And, I was there a long time, and he was, smoothly got into it. What's the process to say, okay, made an NFL career, building a television career. The clothes were before GMA, right?
The close happened. It was really organic. And that's one of the things that's important for us is never do we launch a business that the talent doesn't really use, because it doesn't work. It just doesn't. I mean, you can name how many celebrities that when you see someone's brand, at Walmart, you're like, they're not wearing that, right? And that's the difference for us is Michael's wearing everything. Aaron's wearing everything. Like, and both of those guys are literally looking at fabrics and swatches and hands-on with so many things. And the way the suit, it started with fine tailoring, but when he got the Regis job, there wasn't a huge clothing budget. So our dear friend Victoria Trilling was doing the best that she could and helping us like share some suits from the Fox show. But if you think about 5 shows a week, it's a lot of neckties. So I called a good friend of mine that I knew from the NFL who was working at a big clothing brand. And she literally said, come to the office, and we got hundreds of neckties. And she said, you probably need suits. She said, you should reach out to these guys at Peerless. They're huge sports fans, they do great jobs. And so literally it was like one of those things where we went, met with Richie Wurzberger at Peerless, who was phenomenal. Michael came in, hit it off with his dad, Ronnie. And as time sort of evolved, and you would see Michael 5 days a week on Kelly and Michael, then GMA was part-time, Fox, Venture Pyramid. So there's a suit business here. And sure enough, at the time, JCPenney's was looking to expand their men's line. And so, and it's not even right place, right time, because when we initially spoke to JCPenney's, there was a big CEO change happening. And they said, we'd rather wait until the time is right. And we held a beat for a year. And it's worked out great. They've been awesome partners for us.
So there's an interesting thing I've been watching in your business as you've brought on more talent. And one I want to sort of pivot to, although I swore I'd stop using the word pivot in 2022, is you represent Primetime himself, Deion Sanders.
Coach Prime.
Coach Prime. Can't forget that. And as I understand it, that football team wears Strahan suits.
They did. And that was a very conscious decision by Michael and I. Deion has, Coach Prime has a saying that when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you play good. When you play good, you get paid good. And one of the main reasons he chose to go to an HBCU is he wanted to level the playing field and use his lightning rod of a personality to do that, which is why when he said, this is where I'm thinking, what do you think? We had to go along with him. We actually represent JSU athletics in addition to coach and his sons. But as soon as he said, I want these kids dressed to the nines, Michael looked at each other and said, we have to do this. Like, number one, Michael also went to an HBCU, Texas Southern, but 2, we don't use the word SMAC family lightly. And when it comes time to helping each other out, we do it. And what better way to prep these kids, not for on field, but for off field, than helping them. A lot of them, this was their first suit. A lot of them was the first time they ever measured for a suit. We didn't go off the rack. Our new partners are Taylor Brands, Men's Warehouse. They partnered with us out of the gate. Wasn't even a question. And it was truly worth every penny, because when you see these kids getting off that plane and flashing the liner or their JSU patch and just feeling good, you want them to remember that moment, because we all know the majority of these kids aren't going to make it in the NFL, but we have to do our best, both academically, whether it's resumes, whether it's dressing the right way, mentoring programs, all that. So it wasn't just like, oh, let's get them some suits and help them look good. It was really about what that suit signifies off the field. So
now that, you're working with at least, that school at JSU, it seems to me that, and the fact that there was an element of the suits that y'all provided to the athletes, that opens up the big question. America's 3 favorite letters in the sporting world, NIL. So it seems to me that SMAC has had to start digging into all of those rules and the various state laws and what the universities are saying. And how's that going?
It was definitely a literally crash course in it. None of us were prepared. I still don't think everybody understands it, but what we do know is we had to register Georgie Moskowitz, who works here in the LA office in Mississippi as an agent, because she's the one person that oversees the deals for the students, the NIL deals. We have an amazing attorney who was very well versed in it. And then our best friend is the compliance officer at the school. And we don't make a move without running everything by Hakeem, because it's just too dicey to take a chance on, getting an infraction or disqualifying a student athlete. And also it's our job to make sure we lead by example, because I get on a Zoom with the whole team July 1st and trying to help them understand what this means, how they have to protect their name. Don't sign anything without having a lawyer look at it. I mean, 4 of these kids signed one of those, platform deals that gave rights in perpetuity for years. And we're like, what are you doing? And then what happens? This is your senior year. You now are taking this with you if you make it in the NFL. And they were just like, we didn't know that. So, there's a lot of, I think, people being taken advantage of, which is sad, but it's a crash course in life, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think the name, image, and likeness world, largely people are learning as you go.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a subject that's been talked about so much, but California was the first to pass any legislation, which of course was designed not to go into effect for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And then other states started following.
Right. Mississippi was one of the first. So
Yeah.
we were right there.
And so it's just, it's important. And I think you would agree that the real goal of name, image, and likeness is, it's great to put a couple of bucks in a kid's pocket, because not everyone's going to make the big bucks deals, but legally get them a little walking around money. And that's really important. But most importantly is letting that happen without risking their eligibility.
That's really important. And it's also, now you're just seeing, though, the continued inequities between the bigger schools and the HBCUs, or even just smaller schools, because so much is dependent upon the alumni and the booster club. So when you have, a smaller school that doesn't have the same network and net worth of a lot of the alumni, you're struggling. We're fortunate that we're not going to the alumni. We're working with brands, whether it was Beats by Dre, Gatorade, the list goes on and on, but we don't have that where we can just call up. I mean, I don't want to name schools, but there was one school that they all got together and raised $5 million in like a week. And then they're just literally paying all these kids to go there, and good for them. Like, I wish I had that, right? I mean, it would make my life and job a lot easier, along with our team here that's just constantly hustling, for the brand partnerships.
Sure.
And I have to say, the brand partners have been phenomenal. Like, it's always about highlighting why, whether it was Shador, or now Travis Hunter, like why they're choosing this path. And to me, I'd rather have a little bit more of a challenge in front of us and get these brands that are amplifying their story, instead of just getting a check and just saying, here you go, like for no reason. So
it seems to be all part of that would fit the ethos of what SMAC's doing anyway, is the whole family concept.
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
and you want to fully integrate.
So much of that, my husband, who went to Colgate, if anyone's wondering why there's a Colgate helmet here in the middle of our conference room, he was an O-lineman, and he wanted to make sure that the O-line at Jackson State were acknowledged. So he runs a company called Workforce Software, and he, I think, I want to say about a dozen kids, they ended up signing on to the NIL, which was exciting.
Right, and it's really important that, as we in the legal industry wade through how to deal with NIL and the use of lawyers and agents and the relationship during college and after college. And I think every talent agency has been looking at this, and lawyers in the space have been looking at this. It's such a fine line between pay to play and the appropriate, use of NIL. And it's kind of it's a minefield out there.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're doing the only thing you can do in this space, which is really, since the Alston decision that said NC2A, you don't have an antitrust exemption, and it's, you got to look to the schools. So I think for those of you out there listening now, know your institution's compliance officer. That's the person with whom you have to work, because
that's the only person you should know. Like, honestly, like we don't make a move without speaking to our compliance officer.
Yeah, because ultimately you don't want the fingers pointed at you if something goes south. But if you're dealing directly with the institution, and the institutional authority says you can do this, that's how you should be doing it. Because yes, it's business, but you're dealing with kids' lives.
Mhm.
And a lot of these kids, as you said earlier, if you, like I always like to say, if you say, let's say, just look at D1, let's say there's, for argument's sake, 10,000 D1 athletes. And let's say 2,500 of them get eligible to go into the draft every year. Of those 2,500, 100 are going to get drafted, or, a couple hundred will get drafted, and maybe another couple hundred might have free agent deals. So now you have a pool of 9,500 people who have had this window, the window's closed.
Correct.
So you don't want to hinder that ability. And even if it's just, like I always say, if it's okay now for the offensive line at some small school to be able to say, every Sunday night after the game, we go to Joe's Hofbrau,
Right.
and Joe feeds them and gives them a couple $100 legally, you don't want to do it in a case that would cause the kid's
Correct.
ability and probably his scholarship.
Right.
So another big, since we're talking about important 3 letters, we've hit the NFL, we've NIL. Now let's talk about NFTs, which for those of you that don't know, which shame on you if you don't, are non-fungible tokens, which is what we can refer to broadly as a digital asset that lives in the blockchain. How are you guys working with that, or are you working with it? And is everybody saying, how do I get into NFTs?
I would say like a week ago, it might have been a different conversation, but with, I don't know what their stock market's called, but seeing a lot of the cryptocurrencies, decline, I think people are kind of like pausing a minute. But from the NFT standpoint, we have somebody in our New York office who, runs the most point with it, but then we work really closely with Snoop's son, Cordell Broaddus, and his partner, another gentleman named Nick Adler and Amador, who really have just immersed themselves, and Snoop's been a leader in this space out of the gate. And then we're also working with Gary Vee, who obviously just, like the rocket Stray went up in last month. He's up and out, and just doing so much. So we've been a little slower because when it comes to sports, finding out how to get rights, it's a whole kind of thing. Like when Stray's jersey was retired last year, we were trying to see if we could get something together, but there was like 2 different companies that had the rights, NFL Marks, one had the team, one had this. It was just too hard. It was just too hard. And it's sad because we would have loved to be able to do something, with that, but we'll get there. It's just, it's a waiting game in that you've got to make sure you're with the right partner, because no different than when there's a new type of business, there's a lot of maybe not so scrupulous people out there. So you want to make sure you're not partnering with the wrong folks. And that's what I mean by being patient. This isn't going anywhere. It is complete insanity. And I'm sure it's probably similar when, the internet came to be and everyone was like, what is this? I'm not really sure. And, kids today are like, what do you mean you were around when there was no internet? So I think that's what will happen, 10 years from now. Do I think that instead of having these helmets up, I'm going to have pictures of a helmet? I guess so.
Well, I think everybody's asking that question, and you don't know. And I've talked to people and I've tried to make the argument with them that, will you buy a collectible? And I go, yeah, I want, that Super Bowl ticket in Lucite that I put on my wall. And I go,
right.
So what if you could buy that, but it's
a
picture?
Which I think every game I've been to this year, I had a ticket emailed to me. So I think that's where we're heading, because I just got some Super Bowl tickets on my phone. And not only is it not even on your computer, it's got to be in the app. And even parking passes, it was all emailed. So,
well, I can only imagine with the Super Bowl coming up at our own SoFi Stadium, just down the street from where we are right now, that I'm almost terrified to know what they're going to charge for parking, considering what they charge for regular season.
Oh my gosh.
But but for those of that you haven't seen the stadium,
oh, it's beautiful.
It's pretty spectacular. I remember the first time I went and saw Jerry World out in Texas, and I was blown away. And then this past year, a year ago, when I went to see SoFi, and I was like, Jerry's going to be building himself a new stadium. Yeah. So one of the other things I want to talk about is part of, I guess it's the philosophy of your business. And we've talked about a lot of things, And the two things that really stick out to me that I think are interesting, or most interesting to me, are number one, the family concept of a business, which I think is unique. And two, what you just said or alluded to, which is this is not about the short game. This is about the long play and the strategy for that. And if you would, is it just organic and see what comes along, or are you setting out goals? Like, I mean, sky's the limit, it seems, for somebody like Stray, for example, but, other people, and Coach Prime, what he's done, and, does he make a home down there in the HBCU? Does he, I mean, he certainly seems to be changing the face of the HBCU in general, which is, kind of about time.
Mhm.
But, where are we going? What's the future? What do you see it as?
I mean, each client has a different, 3-5 year plan. So it's not something we could generalize, whether somebody's looking to do more behind the camera, whether somebody's looking to expand, the business that they're in. So there's no cookie cutter answer for that, unfortunately for us. The one thing that we know that sets us apart is we go idea to execution. We're not idea, kick it around and talk about it for days on end. It's let's go, let's find the right people that can help us, bring something to life. And we rarely take no for an answer, except in the scripted world. We hear no quite a bit, but that's a huge goal for us. We've got our first show that's over at BET that we're, just in the development phase still, but we've got one on the board, and we're hoping, we're not hoping, we know we will get more wins on the board, but that's a huge focus for Michael and I for this year, is the scripted space. We're working on our first feature film with Snoop, actually, and we've got a huge documentary, BS High, Bishop Sycamore.
Want to make sure.
Yeah, not the other BS, could be the other BS, but we're thrilled, that we were chosen to share this story, and that one's over at HBO. And we just, before this, I was on a Zoom with our production team, and it's truly something I can't wait to see. And that's something that we also pride ourselves in, is we don't pick up projects that we're not 1,000% behind, because if our name's on it, we have to believe in it, and we have to be able to look the buyers in the face and the viewers at home and say, you should watch this and give us your time when there's so many choices now.
And when you were talking about what the initials of the company stand for, I'd like to focus for a quick second before we say farewell to our audience on the culture element.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about culture, are you about the culture of the athletes, the culture of sport?
Everything.
It's everything.
It's everything. Look at who we represent and what we do, and we check every box in that. And we have a diverse client base, we have a diverse staff, and it's never been a question or an issue for us on what this culture is. It's the reason why we started this business. I've worked for some great companies and for some great people, but when it was time for me to figure out what my next move was, there wasn't a place that I felt I could build what I wanted to build, which is the culture that Michael and I have created here. Pretty much everyone that has left us has gone on to do such great things. I mean, our head of non-scripted literally left us 2 weeks ago to work for the Obamas and run non-scripted at Higher Ground. And for me, clearly the shock of him leaving was something I was like, oh my goodness, like, what do you mean? But then, when he told me where he was going, I was like, yeah. And not only was I proud of him, but I said to Michael, this is a reflection on what we've built, because you have to have an entrepreneurial spirit here. And that's the culture we've really, truly manifested, because I don't want someone coming in and just working on one thing. I want them working across all things, which, again, if you knew my career at the NFL for those 10 seasons, I was able to touch so many things. And I want everyone that works here to have the same experience. Like Corral, who oversees Michael Strahan's brand and does a phenomenal job with turning that into a very lucrative, business. She started out as our intern. And she's brilliant, and she started out on the talent side of things. And as the clothing line started evolving more and more, and I switched her over to it, in the beginning she was just a little I'd say hesitant, and now she can't imagine doing anything but this. And she now works on the Bellas have a partnership with Colugo, which is baby strollers and baby bags. And another executive, came in to work more on the marketing, but she's ended up spearheading Miss Khalifa's career internally. So, we really do, as much as I have an eye for talent, I have a really strong eye for internal talent and making sure that they're, I think, doing not just what's best for the company, more important, best for them, which then is best for the company. We brought our first COO on board back in October, and that's been a game changer for everybody. So it's I don't know. It sounds like, oh, it's so easy. It's not, but when you have a group of people that have been here. I mean, there's a handful of people that we were literally their first job and they're still here. So I think that says a lot.
Well, I think what says a couple things really strike me is, first of all, is the style of this company is about leadership, and leadership is about doing the right thing. And it seems from what you've said today that that's really embedded in this whole enterprise, is doing the right thing. And it, from what you just said, somebody comes in for job A, doesn't mean that that's always going to be their job.
Correct.
You see them and they said, you're going to go over here.
Mhm.
So going back to that phrase that I think should be on a t-shirt, hustle like you're broke. And I think that's really important. And I can't thank you enough for sharing a little about the SMAC story with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's so interesting. For those of you that are out there that aren't yet a member of the Sports Lawyers Association, we are on annual renewal, so it's time to renew your membership. Please go to sportslaw.org and renew your membership and get ready for more announcements on our upcoming Back to Live conference, first time since 2019. We're going to do this. So we'll see you in the middle of May in Atlanta. And thank you very much. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.